So our next storyteller is Michael Carr. Mr. Carr is a Louisville native that prides himself in knowing all of the coolest places. He works as Director of Development at Mattingly Edge, a nonprofit that partners with people with disabilities to thrive alongside their neighbors and real community. For more information, check out mattinglyedge.org. So he links to his organization, not his own actual stuff. That's a selfless person. And you can usually catch him either having a cold one or pouring a cold one out at Old Louisville Brewery. So, ladies and gentlemen, Michael Carr.
Can you all hear me? Yeah? Awesome. So listen, Amanda, that was awesome, but this story is 10 minutes long, and I was not told that I had to memorize it, so I brought some paper. Don't worry, I'm still going to be really expressive. It comes whenever you're gay, your arms, they flail around a whole lot. It's just, you can't help it. It's just how it is, okay? So, Jay was 30 years old and had the most gorgeous ice blue eyes I had ever seen on a man. And he was straight. I know, right? He was the HR manager for this organization where I worked, where we supported people with disabilities to live in their own homes. And I did not see Jay very often, but any time I did, my heart would flutter. I was sure he didn't know me from any of the other employees, but that didn't change the fact that any time I saw him and he smiled that winning smile, my heart would melt into a pool on the floor. I admired this guy from afar for about 2 years because I'm a total creeper, and that's how being gay works when you're from Shepherdsville. You have this internalized desire for things that you can't have. So you fall in love with any straight man that is nice to you, and sometimes even straight men that aren't nice to you. And you don't know how to approach anyone you're interested in because, of course, they could never love you, so you just admire from afar. And then, one day, he was a bit less afar. So I joined the team of this gay man with cerebral palsy named Brian, and Jay occasionally filled in on his team. So we ended up swapping phone numbers, and lo and behold, one day my crush started texting me. He asked me what music was good at the moment. Now, y'all, I am really into music. Like, I am obsessed with music, so, like, it's hitting my buttons, you know what I mean? He told me that his favorite song was Constantine by Something Corporate, and I'll be damned if that song did not show up on the next 4 mixtapes that I made. This man began texting me every day, asking me my opinions on books, film, music, and with every word he said, my crush developed. Like, I fell hard. Like, load up the U-Haul and get some adoption papers kind of hard. I would turn on the radio, and every song was about him. Y'all know what I'm talking about? You felt that way before? Okay. I'm glad that I'm not alone. I would lay awake at night, and I would wonder if he knew how I felt. I would listen to Teardrops on My Guitar by Taylor Swift on repeat while I cried in my bathtub. Over time, Jay began to share more personal things about his life. He used to be Mormon. He used to be married. He had 2 children in Utah that he didn't see nearly as often as he wanted to. And then he told me that one of his brothers had shot himself in the head when he was a teenager, the night before he was supposed to leave for mission. The pain in his words made me want to hold him close. The problem with all of this was that I already had a boyfriend, David. We had been together for 3 years at that point, and he spent a lot of time playing video games. We didn't listen to the same music. He'd never listened to Tracy Chapman's first album. He didn't know who Kurt Cobain was. I felt like I was being taken for granted, and probably because of this, I found myself drawn to this sad man with the ice blue eyes, and I found every chance I could to talk to him, and he always responded. For some reason, I started watching and actually enjoying romantic comedies. Top 40 radio, a thing that I had found abysmal in the past, actually began to make sense to me in its ridiculous simplicity. Sometimes I would even go to Brian's house to hang out with them while Jay worked because I just wanted to be around someone who I thought wanted to be around me. And then it happened. We were sitting in the courtyard at my apartment one day, and he told me that he thought that he might be bisexual, but mostly straight, because, I guess he was part of the bi now, gay later plan. And because toxic masculinity is still a thing. And then he began to rub my knee through the hole in my jeans. He told me that he thought I was beautiful and that he wanted to do certain things with me and to me, like George Michael, I want your sex kind of things. Y'all, I was dumbstruck. Like, I'd been pining after this guy for going on 3 years now. He was the ultimate, unattainable person, and here he was revealing his deepest, darkest secret to me, and only me, and he was that guy that could never love someone like me, and yet, here he was, telling me I was beautiful, but I was in a relationship. I told him that as much as I wanted to, I couldn't. He said he understood. I told him that I couldn't just have sex with him, that I would want to be with him. But he told me that he wasn't out to his family, that he couldn't give me that he was afraid, that he was still trying to cast off 30 years of guilt laid on him by the Mormon church. He quickly made his excuses and left, and after that, any time that I heard A Case of You by Joni Mitchell, I would just lose it. But I kept on wanting him. In what could only be God's cruel joke, I picked up a used copy of The Bridges of Madison County from the Book of Music Exchange. Like, I ruined the pages because I cried so hard over them. Like, I was a fucking mess, okay? I thought to myself, maybe I could change his mind. So I broke up with my boyfriend and I moved in with my cousin because I was 22 and stupid. I was miserable. But I told myself, this is my test. If I can get through this time, it will all pay off, and I will be with Jay, and we will be happy. And I listened to my mixes about love unrequited and love gained and love lost. I listened to Luther Vandross sing A House Is Not a Home, and I knew that Jay would be the man I needed him to be. Y'all know how this goes through, right? He wasn't. And he never would be. One day, he stopped returning my phone calls. He only answered my text messages sometimes. Occasionally, he would send me the naughty text messages that once thrilled me, but now they just made me feel dirty. I told him to stop, and he did for a while, but every month or so, like clockwork, my phone screen would light up and his name would be there. I leaned on my friends to help process what I was going through. They said he was a monster. And I thought maybe that, too, we had in common. Meetings at work became awkward. I oscillated wildly between wanting to throw myself at him and wanting to run away in terror. I wasn't paying attention when I was working my shifts. Sometimes I would be forced to talk to him, and I had to be cordial. I couldn't ask him why he had ghosted on me, not in front of these people, because they didn't know about him. They had no idea. So I started talking to David again. I came clean about everything. He understood that I was young and prone to Taylor Swift lyrics, and I told him that I was insane, and he smiled, and he said he knew it, but that he found it endearing. He stopped playing video games so much and started being more present when we spent time together. He went with me to a Loretta Lynn concert, even though he had no idea who she was or why I loved her so much. So we got back together, and life went on as normal. Once I got some space in between us, I came to understand that Jay wasn't a bad person. He wasn't a monster. He was just scared. Scared of what people would think of him, scared of himself, and as someone who had been there before, I could not hate him for that. So we lost touch over time. It happens. And then I got the phone call from a coworker saying that Jay was gone, that he had made the same decision that his brother had made so many years ago. My coworker was confused. She had only seen the friendly Jay, the happy Jay. She was shocked. She didn't know why he would do such a thing. But I did. I knew. I went home that night, and David, in his infinite compassion, held me and rocked me, and he knew exactly why I was crying. And I just kept saying that Jay wasn't a monster. He wasn't a monster. And David kept saying, I know, honey, I know. And I sobbed because even then, even though I knew he was gone, it was Jay's arms that I wanted around me, that I never got to have around me. that I would never get to have around me. I went to his funeral, and it was full to bursting with Mormon culture and ritual, and I sat in that pew with a few coworkers and thought to myself how Jay would have hated this. None of it was him at all. We sang hymns that he would have found ridiculous, and people stood at the pulpit and talked about a man that was not the Jay that I knew. I saw his kids clinging to their mother, and I wondered if they had any idea about why any of this was happening. And when I went up to the casket, Jay's mother introduced herself to me, and I told her he and I worked together, and she thanked me for loving her son, and I thought to myself, you have no idea, lady. You have no idea. Nobody had any idea. I don't know if I'll ever stop wondering what would have happened if I had stuck around to let him know that he wasn't alone in that struggle to understand his own sexuality. Was there something that I could have done? As I was writing this story to share with you all, I went to his Facebook page to look at photos of him, to be inspired, to see his face again. But at some point over the past few months, his page got taken down. His photos were gone. Even now, it left me hyperventilating that those things weren't there, even though I hadn't seen them in ages. So now, all I have left of him is a song, Constantine by Something Corporate, a song that I still can't listen to without breathing heavily and tearing up. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.